Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Hey Sister. Oh, hey sister, how you doing?
Hey, sister, all is well. It's still hot in Arizona and the COVID cases are still high. But other than that, I am doing well. How
Well,
about you?
tonight, I listen. Hey, the COVID cases continue to rise in the state of Florida. Pew 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 pew. And on the phone on tonight's episode, we have three black women living in three hot spots. So I'm in Florida. Our guest, Judge Maldonado, is in Georgia, and you're in Arizona. So what can we say? But hey, we are still surviving as well as thriving because what else can we do as black women? Okay. That's all I have to say about that. But thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. We see some people are watching, and so what we want you to do is to like, follow, and share this episode. Bring your friends in to the conversation. We are very excited to have our special guest tonight, Judge Naja Maldonado, and we are going to be talking about justice and her journey in the justice system. So, welcome to Hey Sisters.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you ladies.
We're so excited to have you as well. And so, friends, we want you to join the conversation in the comments. We know that you all have a lot to say, especially as we kick off our topics, our hot topics. So, who's ready for some hot topics out there? If you are, drop down in the comments and tell us what hot topics you're ready for this evening. But before we dive into that, we do have to pay homage to our civil rights icons who both passed away, transitioned, took up their wings on July 17th. And that is Reverend C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis. Ladies, do you have anything you want to say or you want to share about those men and what they did for us as a nation and as a community?
I'll just say that I think both gentlemen have challenged each of us to live better lives and to not stand on the sidelines, or standing on the sidelines is really not an option if you want to see fairness, justice, and equity happen. Representative Lewis specifically, I was listening to an interview on NPR yesterday where he was talking about having experienced what he did on Bloody Sunday, that it sort of removed fear from his life, and not in an irresponsible way, but in the way that once you remove that fear from your life, there's pretty much nothing that can stop you from reaching your goals or doing the things that's important to you. And so, I think both men obviously made this world, this country, a better place. But as I wrote in one of my tweets regarding Representative John Lewis, I just wish this country had been better to both of them. Mm-hmm. But rest in power. May they both rest in power, and may we all feel inspired to keep doing the good work and getting into some good trouble.
All right. Thank you, sister, for sharing that. What about you, Judge Maldonado?
I think that it's a sad day that they're both gone, but it's also it's a time to reflect that everything that they've done has come full circle. The times that we enter now are crazy, but there are new leaders budding right now as we speak. And at one point, they were the young voices that people didn't want to listen to, and we have some young voices who are inspiring all of us at this very moment. So I would say work well done to them, and for inspiring those who are next in line, who are actively marching, who are writing petitions, and who are speaking daily about injustices and will not be quieted by those who don't want their voices to be heard. So again, it's a sad day that they're gone, but I'm just so happy that there were powerhouses like them that can inspire so many of us to keep pushing, because there's still a lot of work to do. And my favorite thing that John Lewis ever said was, find a way to get in the way. And I guess I see myself doing that sometimes, not knowing that I'm doing it, but it is a good reminder that those who have come before us had some of the same struggles and they found a way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's a very powerful statement there, because, they found a way with far less resources, far less opportunities, far less in terms of material things to lose, right? And that they did, so we are today. And so what we're doing now will then help those that come after us. It's just such a powerful testament to the circle and what ordinary people have the capability of doing very extraordinary things, because they were both just young men on their own journeys. Mm-hmm. And so rest in power, brothers, and thank you. We accept the baton, we will carry the torch, and we take up the mantle. So let's talk a little bit more. One of our other hot topics for tonight, and we definitely are so excited to have you on, Judge, to talk about this, is because why, oh why? Kemp versus Lance Bottom. So if you all have not been watching the news lately, and hey, I can't say that I blame you, because it's been like Groundhog Day. We're seeing the same thing every day. But if you haven't seen, the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, put in an executive order, like many mayors around the nation are doing, because at the state and federal level, there has been a lack of leadership in many areas. And so the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, she put in a mandatory mask mandate, and the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, decides he wants to sue. I don't know. You're in Georgia. Tell us what you think. Because my sister's in Arizona. We definitely have strong opinions. But being there, what do you think about what's happening in Atlanta right now?
It's absolute craziness. Atlanta, well, the state of Georgia as a whole, our numbers are on the rise. And Atlanta is one of the hot spots, obviously, because Georgia is very rural, but Atlanta and the surrounding areas is more urban. So we're more concentrated people here. And a lot of businesses have mask mandates, but the city did not. So a lot of cities, including Athens, Savannah, put in mask mandates to help slow the spread of this virus that we still don't know what's going to happen. And as Mayor Lance Bottoms put in her mask mandate, Governor Kemp was on a wear your mask tour. So he's out there asking people to wear masks, but because she put in a mandate, he sues her. Not the other mayors, mind you. He sues her. And so part of me feels like he is suing her because he is stationed here in Atlanta, because that's where the capital is and where he operates. And he does not want to be told what to do by the mayor of Atlanta. That's the problem, because none of those other mayors are listed in that lawsuit.
Wow, sister, what do you think about what's happening over in Georgia at Kemp versus Lance Bottom?
It's hard for me to even refer to him as Governor Kemp, because he stole the election. And that's my major issue. To have been Secretary of State, to put certain things and policies in places to make it darn near impossible for people in rural areas or people of color particularly Black and brown people, to vote, to have closed a lot of those voting locations. It was a concerted effort to steal the election, and he did, and he should not have. And I applaud Stacey Abrams for never conceding, because at the end of the day, he didn't earn it. And so to go from that situation to now, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I am just so frustrated that we have politicized wearing a mask. You know, we wear seatbelts all the time. Again, it's so many things that we do that follow mandates, if you will. And so then when it comes to protecting ourselves and each other, we found a way to politicize this. And I go back to, if we just had sat down for a good solid 6 weeks, I think we will be past this. And so it's hard for me to take seriously these governors, including, my own at times, that say, hey, we really want to see these numbers decrease, but then they don't want to put mandates in place. They, are afraid of, they don't want to disrupt the power structure in their political parties and things like that. And it's like, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth. Either you want us to get rid of this pandemic, or you want to just roll the dice, take your chances, and then get everybody back to work and doing what they normally did. Whoever dies, dies. But you can't have it both ways, and we've seen that. So it disturbs me that he has stooped to such a low level to now want to sue Keisha Lance Bottoms. And I hope that she countersues him. I hope that she has some recourse.
And he's suing her while she has tested positive, and her husband has tested positive, and some of her children have tested positive for this very virus. So who better to be a spokesperson and a champion of what we should be doing than her?
Right.
But instead of seizing that opportunity to say, even when you're careful, even when you're being tested, even when you're in a leadership role, because she can get tested and get the results back quickly. My husband took a test. It took 11 days for the test results to get back. So she's getting tested and getting the results back quickly. They had an asymptomatic child in the house, right? She is the prime example of what we should be doing. And she's following the science to say we should be wearing masks, and to then sue her personally. Okay, he's not suing the city, but to then sue the city and her personally, I think is very white of him. And I'll just leave it at that. It is a testament to white supremacy. It is a testament to male patriarchy. It is a testament to the audacity of mediocre white men who are in positions of power.
And I wanted to say this. She also tweeted out, in addition to being sued over a mask mandate and voluntary advisory guidelines on COVID-19, Governor Kemp has asked for an emergency injunction to, quote, restrain me from issuing press statements and speaking to the press. Far more have sacrificed too much more for me to be silent. And I think that, again, it's very, like I said, very white of him, very it's the patriarchy of it all, that you now want her to also not do press releases. So she is the leader of her city, and she is not supposed to keep her tax base, her citizens, her constituents informed. Yeah, he's a piece of work, but no surprises there.
As you said, she's the duly elected representative of her constituency.
And I'm sure her numbers were they weren't questionable like his. So
they had a recount after the mayoral race because her opponent wanted them to recount. So she is the duly elected mayor of Atlanta, proven twice over, once when they counted the first time and during the recount. And because he is a citizen of Atlanta, again, because that's the capital, he does not want that Black woman telling him what to do, period.
Well, we have a comment here. It says waste of taxpayers' money, most definitely, especially when we know the resources need to be going to the hospitals. It needs to be going to PPE for your state-funded hospitals, as well as to all of the small businesses across your state that need PPE in order to operate, and your child care centers. You're trying to open schools. Come on, there's so many things you could be using that money for instead of going to court. And then another comment says, in other parts of Georgia have placed mandates to wear masks, but he hasn't bothered to put a lawsuit on them. White mayors too, absolutely. So I don't know. It's madness what's happening in the state of Georgia. And then finally, in our hot topics, we're gonna talk about the gift that keeps on giving. If I had a voice like Prince, I would say entanglements. That's what you mean to me. Y'all know about them entanglements. So if y'all haven't heard, this is the gift that keep on giving. We've been talking about it now, I guess, for 2-3 weeks in a row. So I guess on yesterday, the spirit moved and Mr. August Alsina and featuring Rick Ross, they done dropped a song called Entanglements. Those of us who have a connection to Louisiana and New Orleans bounce beats, I mean, it starts with that Trigger Man beat, and you like, oh, we about to get into something right here. And I'm like, okay, sister, can we have any more conversation about entanglement? I'll just say this. I will say this, and I said it earlier. When you entangle with the wrong folks, you're going to have to pay the piper. And they paying the piper on this one.
Listen, there are people capitalizing. Mr. Alsina has made a song. There are companies that are putting out T-shirts. I am sure there is going to be a Netflix film called Entanglement soon. So you know what? Keep doing what you do. You know, again, we just have to reiterate that Miss Jada used the word properly. And so the rest of us need to step up our vocab, in the words of one Mr. Bun B, because we clearly didn't know. I mean, we knew the definition theoretically, but until she threw it out there, we weren't out here using it all freely. So now we are having entanglements everywhere with all sorts of things. So
all sorts of entanglements. Well, Judge Maldonado, I know you too, like myself, you're a woman of a certain age, and you even have college age children in your home. And the thought of an entanglement with one of your children's peers
would not happen.
You.
No, ma'am, no, thank you. No, it just wouldn't happen. Like, I just want it all to go away. No thanks.
But I must say, again, as a true Louisianan, my leg could not help but shake just a little as I heard the beat drop.
I mean, when the beat drops, you know, something else, you know, your 504 come out you. I get it. But I had no appreciation for the song. It was pure comedy. It's too much. It's too much.
There's a lot of pure comedy.
It was definitely a lot of pure comedy. Well, listen, we have in the studio who's waiting to come on. We have our other guest for this evening. You know, I've been blowing her up, but Miss Christine Smith, I'm going to add her to the stream. Hey, Christine, how you doing?
Hello.
Oh, you froze up for us on a second. So
can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me, and my apologies for coming in a little bit later. I had a minor emergency with the dog here and had to get him squared away. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk with you ladies, because I do check out your Hey Sister when the time permits. So it's a pleasure. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being with us tonight. Well, since you are here, we might as well throw one more hot topic in for good measure, and that is the third presidential candidate who is running for office and had the again, audacity to have a campaign rally in the state of South Carolina. And one of our favorite, our big fans of the show, and she was even on with us. He was in your state, Jody. So what say you about Mr. Kanye for president?
Are you waiting for Jody to say something?
I'm waiting for y'all to say something.
Kanye is not for president.
I think he has good intentions, considering who we have for president right now. You have a businessman, a regular Joe, if you will. However, I think a lot of he just needs to take some time away from the mic, like back away from the mic, just take some time to do him, get himself whole and healed before trying to run a country. It kind of stresses me a little bit. No.
Okay, there's a no on that side. All right, what say you? So that's the state of Texas is represented there with a no. Let's go to the state of Arizona. The state of Arizona, what say you?
Not to speak for the entire state, because sadly, there may be people in this state who think that it is okay for him to even play these games. At this point, it's like, look, so first of all, it's clear to me that he is not surrounded by people who care about his health and well-being. They need to sit him down and say, okay, let's understand that you're not on the ballot anywhere. Like you don't qualify to be on the ballot anywhere. So let's just start there. Now, could people write him in? Sure. But if we are having trouble with the current White House resident making decisions, science-based decisions in a pandemic, or financial decisions in a financial crisis, like the level of inability to comprehend things and make sound decisions is evident in the current White House resident. Why would we then want to entrust that with somebody who is clearly having a mental break and continue? We all keep seeing it, and yet the people who are closest to him don't seem to want to just say, let's get you help. But it's a no for me, if that's the question.
Okay, all right. Well, what say you in the state of Georgia? So we have definitely some red states, some swing states, all kind of states represented tonight. Judge?
As for me in my house, it's gonna be a no.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. I just don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't even understand why any of it should not be taken seriously. No. Nope.
Yes. Well, unfortunately, what's sad for me, and we saw a little bit of this in Twitter last week. So if you're on Twitter, you saw Chance the Rapper ask the question as it was a legitimate question about, well, why not Kanye? If you are considering, but all I can say is that at this point, we do not have time to waste, or we do not have time to play. We are, as you said, in the middle of a global pandemic that is leading into an economic crisis. We need to have someone who will be able to build a team and have the appropriate people in their respective other positions of leadership. So the State Department, the NIH, the CDC, the judgeship. We're going to talk about justice, right? All of the surrounding wheels that make government work. We need competence. We need experienced And hey, and I'm not one who thinks that if you don't have all that, the necessary, you have to have all the experience, but you need to have some experience, and you definitely need to be willing to learn.
You probably should have read the Constitution at least once.
Well, you should have read a book recently.
Or that.
How about that? Because you're touting that you passed a test, a battery that they give people to test mild cognitive impairment, and you're like, you did so well on that. Like, really, sir? Like, that's your bar? We in trouble already with the current White House resident. So we don't need this. And my concern is that young people who we do need to get out in large numbers to make a difference at every level, at the state level, at the local level. These sheriffs, we saw what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. The sheriffs, the district's attorneys, the school board. You see these school boards meeting right now about decisions to go back to school. We don't have time to waste and don't have time to play. And we started this show talking about our civil rights icons and C.T. Vivian and John Lewis. I would say if you look in the mirror and ask yourself, what would they do? They would not do Kanye.
No.
Is that. So we got a couple comments here. He's just a sickly man with a wife who allows this mess and won't force him to seek help. Or is this for a Kardashian show new seasons? Who knows? Someone says Kanye's job is to split the vote. Perhaps. But at this point, we don't have an opportunity for that. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in for the hot topics. We want you to continue to join the conversation in the comments. We want you to share this with other folks as well. But we are so happy to have our two guests on. And I think one technical difficulty is just taking her out for a second, but we're going to press on. We are so happy to have both Judge Maldonado and Officer Christine Smith with us, because these are two women of color, Black women who are working in the justice system. And we want to talk about their journey, how they got into the justice system, and the work that they're doing. And then we got to ask them some questions. So Judge Maldonado, I'm going to start with you. Tell us about your journey to justice. So you started off, obviously, you went to law school and then you became a judge. So tell us about your journey.
Well, let's start with the most important part. Let's not forget that I first graduated from Xavier University of Louisiana.
That part.
Yes, that part. And I had some really great influences at Xavier. I then went to Loyola Law School. After law school, I worked in medical malpractice for 3 years. And then I worked as a government attorney with the Department of Homeland Security. And after 9 years with the Department of Homeland Security, I was appointed by former U.S. Attorney Loretta Lynch as an immigration judge. So that was the brief journey from my practice on to becoming a judge.
Fantastic. And Officer Smith, so I knew you in a whole different life, in a whole different world, and you transitioned to become an officer. Tell us about your journey to get into the justice system.
Oh, wow. So we met way back in the Gap, back in Austin, Texas. At the time, I was working for Dell Computer, and the whole tech industry just completely collapsed. So after graduating, like I said, this is a condensed version, I was looking for a job, to something I can do to utilize my skills. I have a communications degree from Texas State University. Helping was always something I've done. So it's like, well, what can I do to try to survive after being laid off, making $50-some thousand a year at the time in 2003 to $9.75 when I graduated from college. So a lot of it, I took some advice from my mother, who just recently retired as a nurse, and what industries that no matter what will always be around, and how can I use my own background. So fast forward to 2009, I applied with the Dallas Police Department, and I've been there ever since. And like I said, that's just kind of the short version of it. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your journey. I'm sure we will have lots of questions about that, but you know, we wanted to have you on also because right now, your system, the justice system, is under a huge spotlight. And
Sure.
so as women of color, how are you managing working in the justice system when the justice system is under such a bright light, and when we are in the midst of the other global pandemic of racism? So I'm gonna start with you, Officer Smith, because you've been in Dallas where there were some really major incidents, and where we were reaching out to you, making sure you were okay because officers were under attack. Tell us about what you're experiencing now, just working in the system.
To be woman, to be Black, and to be an officer. That's 3 different challenges. Just being a woman in itself has its own challenges. And then to be Black is another layer. Then to be in the middle of when we're talking about reform and injustice and how do we move forward to that, it has been very challenging. I know recently, it's the month of July, we just recently acknowledged our 7/7. And for those that don't know what 7/7 was, it was actually, we lost 5 officers in the city of Dallas, 4 from Dallas Police Department and 1 from DART. It comes off the heels of a few days prior from 2 controversial shootings. So just add a little context. At the time, there was a peaceful protest. Our officers blocked the street like any other time that there's been a protest. And unfortunately, a gunman began shooting. Like I said, we lost 5. There were other officers that were injured as well as civilians. So just that in itself, then roll back Botham Jean, we roll back. And that's just in Dallas.
Right.
That's just in Dallas. They're not adding anything. So it has been challenged because a lot of people are looking for change, and sometimes there's misunderstanding about what one agency does as opposed to another. So I feel that my role, I am a detective, so I feel my role in any opportunity that I can is to try to either add context or add any type of, or educate and help me listen too, because it's not all about like what the police does and we're always right. I do clock out, but at the same time, an officer is proverbially on duty all the time, because if you know an officer, there's been many times that I've received phone calls and said, hey, can you answer a question for somebody? And I feel honored that someone would look to me to even try to answer any questions. And if I don't know, I'll certainly try to figure it out for you. So long story, it has been challenging because I think a lot of people, especially during a protest, whether that I'm out there on the front line or not, they know that I am an officer, and they say, well, how can you betray the people of whatever? And I have elected to work from the inside out and to try to either bridge the gap, establish rapport, gain some type of understanding, and then as well as offer my experiences too, because I wasn't always a police officer and I didn't always wake up wanting to be a police. So this was like not even the 1,000th job that I ever thought that I would do. Never saw this in my future. But at the same time, regardless of my reasons why I came, I'm happy that where I am because I'm able to utilize my experience and try to help wherever I can help.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I think that's really powerful. What about you, Judge Maldonado? Working in the system, and we had a comment over here earlier. I need someone who understands federal government to win. Folks be distracted by Kanye. We need diverse federal judges, and that's what you serve in the role as a federal judge. So tell us, about your experience working in the justice system.
My earliest experience working in the justice system is, like I said, I worked in medical malpractice for the first 3 years. And I had to go file some documents at court. And the senior attorney who I was working with forgot to sign one of the documents. So I went to sign one of the documents and the clerk said, hold on, only attorneys can sign court documents. And I said, I know. And I continued to sign. And then she asked for my bar number. And that was the first time, and certainly not the last time, that I knew why I was being questioned when one of my many other counterparts, they wouldn't have even blinked an eye at him or maybe her. There are more, I think at this point, women are about 50-50, or there are even more women graduating from law school. But of course, Black women make up a very small number in that now majority who are graduating from law school. So in all of the positions that I have been in, I have been a minority, both as a woman and as a Black woman. Obviously, there are advantages working in Atlanta. Some people call it the Black Mecca for Black professionals. So, we see a lot of us here in these types of roles. But there just aren't many of us at all. And I am uniquely situated as an immigration judge because there are even fewer Black immigration judges across the United States, which is interesting because you would think that there would be a wide variety of immigration judges because we not only have to hear people's stories and apply their life and what they're eligible for to determine whether or not they can remain in the United States, but we also have to have an understanding that people come from different walks of life. And just because it's not the same as ours doesn't make it wrong. It simply makes it different. And so that's why I think it's so important. And that last comment is very true, that we need a more diverse court, because we're non-biased, number one, but you bring your own experiences into any situation that you're in. So to have experiences that when people say judge, I would bet any money that the first time somebody calls out a judge name, the picture in someone's head that pops up is a white man. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm saying that's how people have become conditioned to think. It's kind of funny because when people hear that they have a case with Judge Maldonado and they see me, they're like, well, what in the world is going on? Because you don't look Hispanic. I'm not. My husband is Puerto Rican. But they even don't know what to think when they encounter me. But I think that there is a need for diversity because we bring our own experiences into how we determine what will happen next. You know that some circumstances are plausible because you understand that what you've been through is different from someone else. And what someone else has been through, it needs to be considered. Just because their background is different, what their family does for Christmas, or maybe they don't celebrate Christmas, or maybe they have other rituals that we may think is odd, it doesn't make it wrong. But that's why it's necessary to have that diversity so that you can consider all aspects of people when you're making decisions about their life and livelihood. So I absolutely agree with that comment.
Well, and I know I'm going to get my sister in to ask a question, but I wanted, Christine brought up the Botham Jean case. And in that sentencing, the judge in that case, who also was a Black woman, she caught a lot of flack for coming off the bench, offering scripture, and coming off the bench and offering a hug to the officer in that case when she was convicted. I would love to hear you ladies' perspective. So Christine, you as an officer in Dallas, and then you, Judge Maldonado, from a judge's perspective, because as you said, you're supposed to be you're not supposed to be partial. You're not supposed to have any bias. That's why the lady justice has that blindfold on, right? So I would love to hear both of your side as to, in that case, when you saw that happen, what were your thoughts? Christine, I'll start with you.
Whew. Man, yeah, well, I will say that we in the office watch that daily. And I think just as a woman, because like I said, sometimes I have to preface things in layers. As a woman, I get why she extended that. I guess she felt that her job was done, and so therefore I can extend a good luck, a hug, get yourself together, follow Christ, whatever those words that were exchanged. She felt compelled to do that. So as an officer, like I said, I don't even, well, wow. That, it didn't bother me so much because yes, I am a forgiving individual. However, the optics, let me just say that the optics of it just construed it in a type of way that was it the right thing to do at that time? Could she have, I mean, and I don't know, Judge, you can explain this better than I can. Once the gavel is struck and, the judge went behind in her chambers and they took Miss Geiger out and they had that moment in the hallway outside of cameras and she did I don't know, I mean, what is the right course? So I don't know. I've never seen anything like that before. Like I said, as a woman, and me being a type of person where I can extend, a good luck to you, even in a setting. But I don't know. I sometimes I still grapple with that because I really don't know what is the right thing. And I just know that the optics was kind of, ooh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't have a word for it. Ooh, it's just a,
it's a feeling you got, right? And I think I think that's what happened with all of us. We certainly had a feeling when we saw it, and I don't know if it was a very positive feeling. Sister, tell us about your feeling before we get to the judge's perspective.
Feelings about the judges hugging. Is that you want my opinion on that? Oh, I felt like it was completely inappropriate. I don't know. Again, and I talked about this as far as Amy Cooper and Christian Cooper are concerned too. He's saying, she's paid enough, but he could have paid with his life under different circumstances. So I felt like, forgiveness is between you and your God, but the law is a different story. And I think that it would have been more appropriate for her to have. I mean, look, people suggest that this particular judge has done this before, but that doesn't make it correct. I think that it was completely inappropriate. And I did not like the optics either, because at the end of the day, there is a message that it sent to the rest of us about the value of our life as compared to the value of the Botham Jean, who actually is no longer with us because of Amy Geiger, and to me, being completely irresponsible.
Mm-hmm. All right, Judge Maldonado, I'm gonna get your opinion before I share some of these comments that we have coming in here. Tell us what as a judge. I'm sure as a judge you saw it and immediately had a feeling, as Christine could not quite articulate. Is it a feeling that she received? So what was your feeling when you saw it?
I didn't just have a feeling. I just said, oh my God, that's inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I congratulate people all the time. I wish them luck all the time. But first of all, there's a separation of church and state for a reason. Praying with her was completely inappropriate in the courtroom. I'll start with that. I am not saying that I have a problem with her praying in and of itself, but praying in her robe in a courtroom with a defendant is inappropriate. I understand that she wanted to wish her luck. There are plenty of times when judges, not just myself, that we admonish someone to do better in the future. We congratulate them on being candid. We do all of those things because everyone who comes before us is a human being first, no matter what their issues were, no matter what they did. However, praying and giving her a hug and coming out off the bench, I don't care if she does it every time. Somebody needs to take her aside and say that you really should stop doing that because it's inappropriate. She can pray for her in private. She didn't have to do that. The optics are bad, but it's just not appropriate at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a few comments here. We have one from our friend of another Xavier Wright. Shout out to Blair and friend of Hey Sister. He said that shit was out of line. How about that? We have another officer here who's watching. She said that was not the normal on her Another comment, African American people are too forgiving across the board by nature. As Christians, we should be, but no, it was too soon. Go to church first or your prayer closet. And I guess she said, have that conversation with the Lord. Another, the judge had no business doing that. And there were so many things wrong with what she did. And I think we kind of talked about it. And they said, and had she done it before? And so that's what Christine mentioned, that it I guess in Dallas, it's known that she has done it before.
No, I said that, Christina. So Christina. I want to mention, yeah.
Well, you know, whether she had or she hadn't, it doesn't send a good precedent or send a good message. It doesn't, and it definitely does not send a message of being unbiased and impartiality, because
I think that opens the door to that question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
But like I said, I think I had that before, and I think that's why I had trouble just even trying to just put it into words, because when we all watched it, everyone was watching it, and it was just kind of, you know, it's not so much that like I'm just so forgiving. Like if you want to pray, I think it would have been a different time and a place to conduct that. That this was a very high profile case, and everybody and their mama was watching. So therefore, you wouldn't want to do anything that is misconstrued or just interpreted in any type of way. Like I said, what you do in the hallway en route to your chambers, I guess if that's what she wants to do, I can't tell her not to, but in front of the camera, it literally caught me off guard. And I was like, oh. And then people were rumoring, saying like, well, she's done this before. And I'm like, but is that the right thing to do? Yeah.
Okay. Well, sister, I know you have a question, so I'm going to toss the ball to you and let you ask a question.
Sure thing. And I just was going to say, it's funny because we obviously live in a country where Christianity is the dominant religion or accepted religion. So if she had done that very same thing, but with a Quran in her hand as opposed to a Bible, would people have said, oh, it was perfectly fine? Would they have had the same reaction? But I digress. I wanted to start this question, Officer Smith. I want to start with you, and then Judge Maldonado. I'd love to hear you chime in. I work in the tech industry, and obviously there are things that I feel comfortable being critical of the tech industry because I mean, you know, we're doing some things very well, and then there's other things that we're not doing so well. Mm-hmm. I read something the other day that really struck me, and it said, you know, we always say that there are just a few bad apples in terms of police officers, but it seems like there's only a few good apples. What do you say to that characterization, and how, and do you feel that you could comfortably criticize the industry that you're in while also being active, supportive, you know, a good employee of that system, if you will?
Okay. Excellent question. I get it all the time. I guess I can say, like, yes, there are bad apples, if you will. But I think what I try to express to everyone that's out there is that, you know, what someone else does in another city affects me down here. So what someone does in Louisiana, New York, when you're talking about the Eric Garners and situations, or whatever happens, it messes with me because I know that I am not that type of officer. I've been on the department for 11 and a half years, in the programs, the outreach, the type of officer that I am. I know that there are many others that are just like me. Unfortunately, whether it's between media or whatever, however the information comes out, it definitely exposes or highlights those that are in the wrong. We sometimes, we do think that there are a lot of critical incidents that make the news nowadays with the advent of the camera. I'm sure whoever invented the camera phone had no intention that this is how the camera would be utilized. It is utilized as a tool. But at the same time, on the flip, we take 911 calls at every minute of the day. It's not just those unfortunate incidents that make the news. We still handle, there are officers across the country that handle calls as we should, how we're trained. We are very professional. We handle the call, even if things have to get ugly, that we take care of the suspect. Once it's done, we've got them in handcuffs. We do what we're supposed to do, and we go on. Can I be critical of my industry? Absolutely, because even just as people, we have to continue learning. We have to continue to make things better. And if people are crying out that there is an issue, then it's not an isolated incident. Let's take a look into this and let's see what we can do. Like I said, it has made my job, I'm not going to say harder, because I already knew that going into this industry would not be easy. But I do understand and respect the fact that amongst just about all professions, that police or law enforcement has the ability to do two things: take life or liberty, excuse me. No one in the tech industry, short of you having a mad person coming in and just decide that they want to go postal, that in itself is isolated. But in law enforcement, I respect the fact that these two things can happen. I don't think any officer wakes up saying that, I think today is going to be the day that I'm going to do this. I think most, not all officers, that they clock in their shift, they want to do their job and affect it, and then go home. I also understand that regardless, like even as the greater officer that I believe that I am, all it takes is one mistake and none of anything that I've done. And I've done a lot of great things in my 11 years. All of that gets wiped off because this incident happened. So I'll just pause with that and let anyone else chime in or ask a question.
Mm-hmm. All right. Judge, so we have a comment here said there's more bad apples than good. And so we have to challenge ourselves and ask that question. Are there more bad apples than good, or is the bad so bad that it taints the whole bunch? Or, there is data that's out there that shows that white supremacist groups and organizations are infiltrating the police forces and the military in this country as well. So I know it's a lot going on. It's a complex issue. It's a complicated conversation. Judge, what say you?
Sorry, I had to get myself off mute. I would say complacency is a huge problem. There are times when, as a judge, I will read about someone else's decision, and I just say to myself, what in the world? Or my colleagues and I will get together and read another decision from somewhere else, and we're all wondering why they're doing that at that court. They're not following, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, which makes it difficult for those of us who try our hardest to do what we're supposed to do, because then we're questioned about why we're being so strict. Or I think that it's true. I always think of Crash when people ask this question, the movie Crash. There was the officer that molested the young woman at the beginning of the movie, and at the end of the movie, he had to save her after a car accident, and she didn't want to be touched by him, even if it meant her life. So do bad officers do good things? Absolutely. Do good judges make bad decisions? Absolutely. It's all about being mindful and not being complacent, and when making a bad decision, wanting to correct it as opposed to believing that bad decision should become the norm. And also, like I said, I read decisions all the time that make me scratch my head. And there have been some times when I have colleagues that come and ask me a question, and I tell them I think that's an absolutely bad decision. We have a rapport where we can discuss that with each other. And that doesn't always mean that they're going to take my advice, and vice versa, because I go to them when I have questions as well. But the fact that they came to me, or that I was willing to go to them, is a first step. The problem really is complacency in any profession, when people just keep getting away with mediocrity or just doing the wrong thing. They just continue to do it, and it becomes the system.
Mm-hmm. We have a question here. It says, Detective Smith, do you believe the police unions in general would give the same level of support to African-American officers in situations that involve police misconduct as they have with white officers? It seems they are ride or die, particularly in NYC, no matter what the evidence shows. So what's your thoughts about that? I guess that goes to that critique question.
And so the question, if I'm understanding, is do the police unions, because we have three main unions or associations in Dallas, and actually I'm a part of all three. But let me just say, do they? Sorry, as you're asking, or do they protect their own, if you will, or are you saying that?
Do they give the same level of support to African-American officers in situations that involve police misconduct as they have with white officers? Because usually what we see in the news is like you can time it. Okay, there's this incident, then the union is going to come out in support of that officer, whatever action the city or the judge or not the judge, is usually the city or the police chief take, if they fire them, if they discipline them. And usually there's this, so it's kind of like that,
as a person that is a part of an association, that is their role to be out and support, I guess, depending upon the misconduct, whether it's a small infraction or a major infraction. I think with what we're looking at now is that you're seeing a lot of non-Black officers in the spotlight right now and it would make it seem like, oh, they're, regardless of whatever it is, that they are just in support of that. As a member of my associations, I feel that if I got in trouble, that my association would show some support to me as well as the other officers who are Black, because it's not so much that you're paying for me to do that, but I presume that if I were in trouble and my lawyer was here, they're going to fight tooth and nail for me. And behind the scenes, they're going to look at whatever the situation is and address it like, well, yeah, you did mess up here. Now, you didn't do this over here, but you did mess up in here. You're going to cop to that and then take care of that situation. So I haven't seen anything from my experience here where it would appear that one group of minorities are being treated less than in comparison to white officers. So I said I can only speak to my agency and the experience that I've been exposed to. So any other associations, they're a little bit different. But can I just quickly just make a point to something that Judge said, because excellent points. One thing that when we look at these critical incidents across the country, or these controversial incidents, one big misconception is when she said that, like, well, why is this agency doing this over there? And why is this? There's no uniformity as far as law enforcement. When you take certain things into consideration, like the municipalities, a small podunk town doesn't have the same budget or resources or training that a larger city has, because every city is not the size of Dallas. Every city is not a Houston, to LA. You have many, different, like I said, municipalities, and you have the troopers. Their training is a little bit different than, say, this agency on here. So I think one thing, a myth buster that I can at least say here, is that there is no blanket of every agency is given the exact same thing, and add in a little bit of your own personal city traditions. I liken that to being in a sorority. National headquarters said, this is how you're going to go through your membership intake process. And then you're maybe taught some additional things that are specific to, let's just say, Xavier, or specific to Texas State, or what have you. There's just no across the board. If that can change, I don't know, because like I said, every agency is different and every city is completely different. So I just want to touch on that.
Okay. So then, speaking to that, so what reforms would you like to see if you could wave your magic wand on this criminal justice, a lot of things have been bantered about recently, and you know, I know that the term defund the police has caused a lot of people to you know, be up in arms and, you know, make some political commercials about it. But you know, we reallocate and reappropriate funds all the time at state and federal levels all the time. So you know, I don't know if local jurisdictions need military tanks. I just don't know. Like, you know, I think there are opportunities. So if either of you had a magic wand, because you're at one end of the system and the judge is at another end. You're like at the entry point, she's at the termination point of the system. What reforms would you like to see at your respective ends of the system? Let's start with the judge this time.
I would like to see more mental health resources as opposed to jail being it. I don't know how all of that would look, so I don't want to start, you know, visualizing on the spot, but there certainly needs to be more mental health resources. And now that people actually recognize drug abuse and alcoholism as a disease, for there to be more resources for individuals who are addicted to those substances. I'm very proud to say this. I know some people think it's crazy. I'm very proud to say this though, but my brother was just granted parole and will be coming home very soon. And the problem that he's always had was his addiction to drugs. And the remedy has always been, well, let's put him in jail. That does not solve the problem at all. And I think in that way, the system fails each and every time, because the only recourse as a judge that we are able to give in those types of situations is jail for the most part. He wasn't selling. I'm talking about for those who are addicted to these substances, which also usually links to some type of mental health issue. That would be the first and major change that I think would need to come. That would certainly free up a lot of the resources for police officers, because they see a lot of recidivism because of mental health and because of drugs, and jail did not solve that problem.
Yeah, I know one of the things my husband, he talks about, like even I know in some countries over in, you know, police don't stop people for speeding in other, you know, in some other countries. It's like, it's kind of like with the toll tag, you know, they take the, you know, the camera takes a snapshot and they send you the ticket in the mail, so the police can be doing other things that are police worthy. So I know that's one of the things we've discussed even. What about you, Officer Smith? What or detective? Let me, because you know, I've been saying, you know, I've been trying not to use their first names too much, because like I said last week when we had Dr. Byron on, Dr. Young on, I like to give people they bona fides. That's right. You know, if you earn those titles, then we won't start talking about all the titles that you have. So detective, because you're no longer an officer, you're Detective Smith. Yeah. Hello.
I am a detective, but at the end of the day, when I have my uniform on, they could care less of my rank. All they see is my uniform. Officer, can you help me? I don't feel any type of way. It's like, you need to call me. It's okay. It is okay. Officer detective, it's okay. One of the things that I will say, especially with mental health, I'll just give a little tidbit to our department, because again, every agency is different. So I can only talk about mine. In 2017 to 2018, we received a grant just to start the Right Care team. I'm not quite sure what the Right Care or what Right stands for, but basically what it is that you have a psychiatrist, a social worker from Parkland Hospital. You have a representative, paramedic from the Dallas Fire Rescue, and you have a Dallas police officer that rides around in a special SUV that accepts all of the calls for our mental health. So anytime that someone is going through some sort of health or mental health crisis, they will answer the calls, because typically you would send an officer out. And as an officer, we only have a certain threshold that if they meet that threshold, then we could either take them to, let's just say, Parkland or Green Oaks or whatever the agency that accepts them, or depending upon what other circumstances, unfortunately, they would go to jail. So the right care allows the medically trained social worker to basically go a step above our threshold and utilize other resources that as officers we do not have access to. Mm-hmm. If they are going through some sort of other medical crisis, then we have someone who is medically trained, such as someone, a paramedic. And depending upon the circumstances, if the patient or the subject is going through another type of, let's just say they're going through excited delirium and they're needing to be detained while the social worker assesses them and can contact the other resources to admit them, it's a car full of onesies. So we've covered our bases with that. So I would like to see the right care. And let me just say that they are assigned to South Central, which is where I trained in Dallas, because they were receiving 90% of the medical health calls in the city of Dallas. So I would love to see that expanded to the entire city as well as to the entire country. That is something that, but that either comes with fundings or grants or what have you. And again, every agency does not have the type of funds to either to do that. But I guess that's where reallocation comes from. But this is a special program, and I'm very proud of this program that we have with Dallas.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Fantastic. So any advice for those of us who may come in contact with the system and how we can navigate it? This will be the last formal question, and then I'll let my sister do a closing question and we'll get ready to wrap up. But how do we navigate the system? I mean, for me, navigating the system is stay out of it. But yeah. So I don't know. How do we navigate the system?
One is to stay out of it. I think from my end, I'm grateful to be on a panel such as this, because this is one way that we can navigate to ask questions, to figure out how one can be involved. I do understand that, not everybody is police officer material, and I think that is part of the problem. I'm a background detective, so how I navigate is to be in folks' business, to do my best to, figure out, who is the best candidate. But I don't get to make the full decision. That's the command staff's part of it. But I think navigating is getting involved in some aspect of the criminal justice system or with your local police department. If there's something that you are not either understanding, I think it's great to protest or to march. I marched a few weeks ago with fellow officers and people in the community. But then once we've done this, what else can we do to get involved and to try to make that change? Vote. That's another way to navigate. But after we've done that, again, get involved in some type of way, work one-on-one with an officer that you feel that you can trust, and try to devise some sort of outreach or continued speaking and educating, because I think a lot of times we do get educated on Facebook, and that just that's not always the best thing, but we do learn some interesting things. I mean, but Facebook law is...
I'm sure the judge has some things to say about Facebook law too. So what about you, Judge? How can we navigate? What can we do?
I think the best thing is that everyone has a village of some sort. Yes, you should stay out as best you can, but your village needs to be knowledgeable, and you also need to be vocal. I grew up in New Orleans, so it's kind of like everybody knew everybody. But while I was there, I was not as vocal as I have become since moving to the Atlanta area. There is a wonderful woman running for school board in South Fulton County. Her name is Francesca Warren. And if anything, she lights a fire under people, constantly asking, what are you going to do about it, though? And that's writing a letter, shooting an email, calling. There was a recent incident not too far from where I live where there was some kids, 15 to 13 years old, with a gun that looked real but was a toy gun, and a shop owner called the police, etc., etc. The police officer stopped them and held them at gunpoint, so everybody was up in arms because he held the children at gunpoint until backup came and they can check them. And one thing outside of that incident that I truly admired is that the citizens in that community demanded a meeting with the sheriff. He granted them that meeting, and they had a very open and honest discussion. They did not agree on everything. There was no resolution about everything on that day, but the discussions are ongoing. So how you navigate the system is to know what the system is, number one, and Facebook lawyers are horrible. I don't recommend any of them, just to let you know. Google School of Law is just as bad as Trump University. So with that being said, I just stay away from it if I were y'all. But you need to know what system you are in, and you need to be vocal. You need to be able to go and speak to your local leaders, to email, to call them when you have a grievance. They should know your name, well, depending on the size of your town, obviously. But I'm sure that Detective Smith can say that there are officers who are regular in certain communities. At least make it a point for those officers to know who you are. And they work for us. You can ask them a question if they're not busy, obviously, arresting somebody. Go and ask a question. If there was something that you saw and you believed it was an injustice, talk to them about it. Be involved. Don't feel like it has to be an us against them. It's going to be an us talking to us, because like Detective Smith said, when she doesn't have on her uniform, she's a Black woman. So nobody especially when I'm out at Walmart, with some yoga pants and a t-shirt, nobody sees a judge. I'm just a Black lady trying to get my groceries. So we have to become comfortable with voicing our opinions and speaking to people who are in the system so that we can become more knowledgeable from the people who could take away our lives or livelihoods.
Mm-hmm. All
Can I add one more thing with that before we close? I'm sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things in my long 11-year career, one of the things that I've always participated in, I've worked with the Police Athletic League. I've done barbershop talks. I have participated in many panel discussions, churches and whatever. Anyway, as an officer, there's so much stuff that we put out there, and yet I crave the community involvement. Sometimes we have it and sometimes we don't. And then it's like, well, I wish that we did such and such. Like, well, actually, we did it about a week ago. We come into your neighborhoods. And so I would just like to reach out to everyone in the community to seek that. We have an excellent community affairs unit. We have that deals with a lot of many resources across the city of Dallas that we can help. I'm pretty certain that any officer that you come in contact with, including myself, if you have a question, I encourage the dialogue, because if we don't, I would rather you ask me and maybe we can either clear up an understanding or let me put something on your mind, and vice versa. But if we don't ask it, I would hate for someone to be in a situation that they felt disrespected or they were hurt. We do have recourses. We do have an internal affairs. And I know some people may say like, well, how does the police, police the police? But I would rather you to go ahead and express that and get that off your chest and see what we can do to try to fix that versus to internalize that and go out there and say that, oh, we're not doing this or doing that. Like for Dallas, I am a proud member of this department, and we are trying to do whatever we can. Do we get it right the first time, the second time, the third time, the fifth time? No, no, and no. But I feel that in a lot of cases that we are trying to do our best, and there are people in the community that are trying to be the change that people are seeking. Seek them out. We're all over the place. We have 7 different substations. There are people that are out there that this is what they do all day. We're not answering calls. We're in the community, and I just, please reach out. If anyone has any questions for me, after this is over, I'd be more than happy to, because that's what it is that I do, and that is what I feel that the judge is saying, that we just need to continue the dialogue of what next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, ladies, we thank you so much for your time. Sister, I know you have some closing thoughts. I'm going to throw it to you first. And well, before I go to that closing thought, I have to drop in the comments here because Judge Maldonado is also an author. And so I want to shout out because she wrote a book. The title is Mama Didn't Raise This Woman. You can find it on Amazon.com. Tell us, you can find it. It's Audible, Kindle, paperback, however you want it. Tell us about your book and why you wrote it.
So there are a million stories about people who grew up in a fatherless home and how that affected them. And of course, there's this stereotype that, Black kids don't have fathers, which I grew up in a complete opposite. I grew up with my father in a motherless home. So for a young woman growing up without her mother, I wanted to write a book on that perspective, because when I was, I guess, trying to heal from some past pains, I had no resources. So I figured that I would be the change that I want to see. So I made a resource for other people like me. So I wrote a book.
That's phenomenal. Well, we are so excited about that. So we know that a lot of our viewers, one of them, Lakeisha Johnson-Wheeler, just said, thank you for your service. She's an avid book reader, and she loves Audible. So this is one you need to go get and download, Lakeisha. Mama Didn't Raise This Woman. So we want to thank you for being with us tonight. Detective Christine, how you said people can reach out to you. How would you want them to contact you?
Well, they can either come to my Facebook at Christine Smith. They can find me on my, good Lord, just message me. Reach out. I can give you our number two. Let's see.
So
you can find me out there on Facebook land. And if they have a question for me, you know what? I can give you my desk number, 214-671-4425.
Okay, 214-671. Say that again.
4425.
4425.
Because one of the many hats of being a detective is I also worked in recruiting. So people do have questions about, how can I join the department, or what things should I look for? What things should I will provide a resource. And if I can't, I'll figure it out and point you in the right direction.
All right. Sister.
Yes.
Closing thoughts.
Well, I had thoughts and questions.
Well, go ahead. I mean, y'all got a time limit?
I actually do have to run because I have to go give somebody a gift and then come back home for another call. But thank you both. Thank you very much for your willingness to participate. I know that this is not always an easy topic to discuss, especially because it has become such a polarizing issue in the Black community specifically. I would say that I do personally feel like it would help if, I've always had this belief that, for example, public school teachers should send their kids to the schools that they teach at, because then you might be more, you might hold your colleagues more accountable to make sure that your children get the education that they deserve. And that also, I also believe we ought to pay our public servants more than we do pay them. But similarly, I think some of the issues that we face, you know, you talked about the community outreach aspect of it or the community affairs aspect of it. Some of it is, you know, a lot of times the very officers that are policing us have no contact with us, except for when we are being arrested or something like that. So perhaps if they lived in the communities that they served, like politicians are required to live in certain municipalities or communities, that might help help the issue. But nonetheless, I just wanted to say, because I often wonder what I would do if I were in the situation. Now, the question that my sister posed was, how do we navigate the system? The question that I'm going to ask directly is, for all of us who are Black people or we have Black children, if they are in a situation where they are pulled over by the police, how should they act? So whoever wants to take it, just
I'll go ahead and how does a child, because although I don't have any children, I've had my hand in raising children, and I even tell this to my family members. When you're getting pulled over by a police officer, there's a little bit of a lag time because they are either running your plates, they're marking out and getting whatever stuff necessary before we exit the vehicle. I would suggest having all of your documents in a Ziploc bag and be able to present that. Turning dome lights on, so therefore there's no misunderstanding of where one's hands are, because unfortunately, you know, training, we look at hands and hands get to moving, and so that it is unknown on both ends, the person inside the car as well as the person that's pulling someone over. So having those documents ready and to be able to answer any questions. I would also suggest not holding court on the side of the road, because I feel that as people, we want to argue our point. As a child of someone, I always want to be able to argue my point, because in that moment, that's what I feel I'm doing. I feel if I've been wrong, I'm going to argue it right then and there. And that's, in my opinion, that's not the time or place to argue. We can talk about it in court, because it unfortunately has led to dire situations with just that whole interaction. So just being prepared to get pulled. If you are pulled over, have your documents ready, turn the lights on, hands on the steering wheel, doing what is being asked, whether you don't agree with it, request the officer's information, go to court, fight that in court. And even still going to court does not always mean that the situation is going to end up positively for you. You may still be having to pay that ticket or whatever that situation is, but we live another day to figure this out, or go to internal affairs to address the situation there.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right, we have some dissenting points of view on that.
Mm-hmm. I already know.
Yeah, I mean, I to be honest with you, I've very recently have been saying I need to find myself a lawyer, because, again, I know you said not to go to the law school of Google or Facebook, but you know, I heard this classroom law. A lawyer speaking, and he was basically saying, don't answer any questions. You know, you need to have a lawyer present, because as the Miranda rights suggest, anything you say can and will be used against you. So I have often been like, do I need to have a lawyer? And you mentioned about having your license, having your documents in a plastic baggie. You know, my fiance says that he does the same thing. But for me, I'm like, I usually just pull up my insurance card on my cell phone. So now I feel like, okay, now I got to print my insurance card, because I don't want somebody thinking if I reach for my cell phone to say, hey, my insurance card is really on my cell phone, that it could be a life-altering situation.
And I think we're going to have another whole conversation about this, and with some police officers, because, you know, to the point that Blair makes here is that we can do all this and still die. We've seen stories of it. You know, we've seen the Philando Castile is a prime example of that his life was still taken because that person got nervous basically. And so we need to have another conversation just about that. My hope, as like I said, we started the show with references to C.T. Vivian and John Lewis. I want us to get into some good trouble. I don't want us to be silent. I don't want us to be passersby in this life, because we should be passing on and passing the baton, passing the torch, and passing on. And so, we all have to, first and foremost, for me, is just recognize our shared humanity. And if we start with recognizing our shared humanity, I think we can get on the road to actually equality, and then be on the road to true justice. But until we recognize our shared humanity, this is going to be a struggle for us. At least that's how I see it. So comment here, the police are supposed to be trained professionals. Yes, but as Detective Smith said, every jurisdiction, the level of training and professionalism is different, and the standard to even become an officer is different. But we don't have to have a whole thing on police.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, because we could go literally another hour, but
yes, for sure. So, but we want to thank you both for being with us. Anything you want to say in closing as we wrap up tonight's episode of Hey Sister? Judge?
I just want to say thank you all for hosting this particular show, and for hosting the next show on the topic that we can't really get into right now, because all of this is so important. And I'm just always proud to see Black women come together and make amazing things happen, because this is what I feel like happened tonight. And Detective Smith, thank you so much for what you do. And I'm sure that you are working to change from within. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Judge. And again, the shared sentiments. I'm grateful for the panel for just express just a little bit of what it is that I do, or what officers do. And yes, we probably can go to a whole nother 2 or 3 hours and still won't be able to address everything. So again, thank you. I say get involved, let your voices be heard. Black women, Black men, everyone get involved, so therefore we can continue to make the type of change that you would like to see in the future.
Absolutely. Sister.
I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you both very much. Thank you for what you do.
Well, I want to say.
No, go ahead, sister. Go ahead. I was just telling them thank you.
Thank you both for joining us tonight. Thank you all for watching tonight on Hey Sister. Please share this conversation with others, because we want to, again, I think this is our little piece in part in trying to make the world a better place. And, looking at all these beautiful melanated women. I mean, we could be a Shades of You commercial. I don't know if y'all remember Shades of You.
Commercial. All of this good hair on here.
Yes. All of this. Yeah, we could do a good commercial up in here. Whoever's watching, we're all available. How about that? Let's do that. But I want to say that I want to see more of us in roles as police officers, in roles as attorneys, in roles as district attorneys, in role as judges. Because if more of us are in those roles, then we can't do anything but make the system be what it's supposed to be. And that is fair and equitable to all. So with that, we're signing off tonight for Hey Sister. I'm going to ask you all to hold the line while we say bye to everybody else. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.